Connor is essentially, because of how prolific he's been, because of how much he moves the needle from a viewership standpoint, holds a lot of the leverage in all these situations. So there's now the ego part of,
Mhm.
well, you're a hell of a fighter too. And if you're essentially like, I have to wait for this guy to say that he's ready to go. Like, how did you work through that process?
Here's one very self-serving, self-confident way that I've also looked at this. A lot of people could say, "Hey, what's a real fighter, right? Are
Mhm.
you a real fighter if you fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, any weight class? Am I just some dumb knuckle-dragging idiot who goes and fights as a pugilist in a cage for money? Am
Mm.
I that, or am I a guy who now has been out of fighting for 12 months, but still the money's rolling in? Still, my other businesses are being set up. My other businesses are making money. My other connections. I'm going to make some money this weekend doing a mastermind with another business coach that I'm doing. I'm out there making money. I am a working business every day of my life, whether it be through endorsements, sponsorships, appearances, businesses, all these other things that I'm doing. So people can say, man, you're an idiot. You wasted all this time. You're probably begging for a paycheck and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm not that guy who had to beg and call Dana every other week. Hey, money's getting low. Hey, I got this land loan over here. And hey, I got this mortgage over here. I got numerous mortgages. I got land loans. I got all these different things going on. But then I also have these other businesses that I've set up over the last decade and a half
Mm-hmm.
to be a guy who's not just a pugilist and fighting in a cage. I'm a guy who is already set up and I don't need to fight, but I want to fight. So if I have to prolong it a little bit longer,
You can afford the patience.
I can afford the patience. And that's, Dana said that. He's like, Dana says, Chandler's one of those guys. He's good. He's got money. He's set up. He's not just a guy who only relies on the paycheck. And that's where this narrative of the UFC and fighter pay and all this kind of stuff comes from, because all these guys who have been given this huge platform to have all of this attention and all of these connections and friendships and opportunities, and they just don't monetize it. They don't grab hold of it and make it the best that they possibly can. And they just wait for that next phone call. Okay, who am I fighting? Because I need a paycheck.
Right.
Why do you
So
think
that's
that
the way I
is?
look
You
at it.
think those guys are just those are just the dudes who just live to fight.
A little, yeah. I mean,
Live to fight, fight to live.
or it's effort. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. I mean,
Mhm.
trust me, there's days that I wish I wasn't such a just hard charging nonstop. I mean, I was on 3 different phone calls this morning about 3 different things that have nothing to do with fighting.
Mhm.
Do I wish I would have had just a morning where it was just me hanging out doing nothing? Yeah, maybe sometimes, but ultimately I like what I'm doing. I like having these other businesses and these other things that I'm setting up, because ultimately too, I'm going to take those gloves off one time and at some point and say, well, now what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty, be on the bus, I'll be
Video
freaking
games.
doing some
Live
things. Yeah.
stream with the
Live
boys.
stream,
Right, right, right,
with the
right.
boys, so that's one of the things, that we as fighters, man, they give us a huge platform. And if we don't monetize it, it ain't their fault. It's our fault.
Right, right.
Mhm.
I think that's the same. That's similar with a lot of athletes. Like even in our, playing football, it's like if you're not somebody trying to maximize and optimize all of your like potential avenues, like while you have the logo backing you,
Mm-hmm.
you're only like hurting yourself, because a lot of guys, it's kind of like any free time you have, it's Call of Duty, it's video games, it's getting banged up, it's enjoying as much free time as possible, thinking like I'm just living and pursuing this one profession, which ultimately, like you said, you take the gloves off, the helmet comes off, and then it's like, what are you going to do next? And if you didn't spend time being curious and diving into any of those interests, that's where it kind of hits you mentally, where it kind of just takes a toll on you.
Mhm.
Sure. And I mean, look at you guys. You guys are the perfect epitome of this. I mean, years ago, you guys started with that. You guys were sitting on the floor back here on the bus, that first pod you guys
Talking
did.
about
Yeah,
how we
triple
wiped our
zero.
ass.
Yeah, right. And there was definitely times as y'all were playing, we were like, dang, dude, like I got to go do this when I really should be maybe focusing only on football, but I'm going to do the bus or I'm going to do this. And obviously it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So life is a series of trade-offs. And what
Mhm.
is manageable to you guys compared to manageable to the next player, or manageable to me compared to the next fighter, it's all different. And if I'm able and I have the bandwidth and I have the ability, the gumption, the foresight to say, you know what, eventually this is going to be over, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I mean,
Mhm.
the last year I've got money coming in outside of just fighting, and I've enjoyed most of it. There's times where I kind of grit my teeth. I'm like, okay, I got to do this, but you know, next week I go to St. Louis for some hiatus stuff. We're going to go 48 hours straight, just bang, 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 bottle signings and appearances and distributor meetings and that kind of stuff. And I enjoy that kind of stuff because I like the business aspect of what I've been given. when it comes
Right.
to platform stuff. So
Yeah, and utilizing what you've been able to do in the cage
Yeah.
and through social media and all that. There's a level of when you find out, like, kind of what you figure is like what I was put on this earth to do. Like at one point, you and I were like, football is what we were meant to do in this world, fighting for you. It's nice because I was one of those guys that when I got in the league and it was like, hey, you can do this internship for free. It usually costs this much, but blah, blah, blah. You can go get your graduate degree. You can go do these certain things. I was like, I'm not doing any of that shit. I'm focusing on football and that is it. And I look back on it now thinking to myself, man, if I would have took advantage of a couple of those things, I maybe have more tools now being in this world. Luckily, I'm in the world where we have a successful podcast. We're able to travel and do all these things. You get lucky in a lot of situations, but it's all utilizing the amount of time that we all have. We all have the same amount of time. It's like, how do you structure it in a way that is the best for you and gives you the most fulfillment? Like sitting on your ass all day playing Call of Duty is great, but you let me do that for a week straight, I'm gonna be wanting to kill myself.
Well,
I want to go do something.
people are wired differently too, and and it's completely fine for you to be wired that way. And it is for it's completely fine for a fighter or a football player to be completely wired that says, hey, when I'm on the field, I'm working. When I'm off, I'm just hanging out doing whatever. That's fine for them as long as they do not complain about their contract because it's not enough money. As long as they don't complain that they don't got money coming in. As long as they don't complain whenever they do take the helmet off and all of a sudden the phone stops ringing and they don't have their next paycheck coming in. Well, that's the bed you made. That's the couch you sat in. Like that's what you do, right? And that's fine. But just you don't have the right to complain about it because especially in today's world, think about what you guys did with some microphones and some cameras, and now this big crew and this big file. Like you guys built something out of nothing, and it's so not that it's been hard, but it's easy compared to our parents and our grandparents.
Oh, come on. Whoa.
I'm saying
Boomer Chandler over here, dude, trying to say the last generation had it easy
in this chair by the end of this podcast.
But you get what I'm saying. It's
every day.
It's so much
brick by brick.
I know, but it's so much easier today to build something than it used to be, right? You guys with the internet. I mean, there's kids making $1 million a year selling gummy bears on TikTok right now. Like it's
get my hand on those
easier.
gummy bears.
Right, I guess I can see the gummy bears.
Yeah, get my hands
You
on
know
them
what I'm
boys.
saying? So it's almost like there's no excuse too.
Correct.
It's not like it's not like you think Mike Ditka back when he was playing was able to build what he was building or whatever. It's like it's so much easier now in all the sports, especially when you're talking about the NFL, you're talking about the UFC, you're talking about these
the access resources, they're just in abundance. And guys would rather not like look in the mirror, look at themselves closely to realize like the mistake that they made that they might not have understood at the time, but you ultimately fully identify with just what you do for a living. And the minute that's taken away from you, because in sports, you kind of have control, but really you don't have control when that moment's taken away from you. It's dictated by somebody else, usually. And then at that point, you realize you've wasted all that time. They're probably not thinking about that. They're just thinking about how their contract situation was or how they got fucked or how they got screwed. And it's easier to complain and point the finger than it is to be like, okay, I put myself in this situation.
Yeah, and we are, as athletes, like we got a lot of ego, right? And people are afraid to take risks. You guys took a big risk to getting laughed at and pointed your finger at whenever you guys were doing that first episode. And if Bussin doesn't take off and become what it is today, you guys took a huge risk to get completely embarrassed by all your boys in the locker room, right? Like it was a risk that you took.
Hey, people laughed at us?
I'm saying they could have. If this whole thing didn't take off, right? Like people are afraid to take risks too,
right?
Which that's a part of human nature as well, especially when you're on a platform. I've done it 1,000 times. I mean, when it comes to these little failed things, my merch isn't selling good. Or I tried this, or I tried, like, you guys do a good job of like, hey, we're going to throw this out there. If it works, it doesn't. Yeah. If it doesn't work, no ego. Who cares? Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, fear of failure or not having the fear of failure.
Because then it's like you do all these things and put yourself out there to kind of, whether it's promote brands or all the things that you kind of dip your hand into, and then you go out there on the field or in the octagon and fail, right? And that you just know you're in your insecure brain, we're opened up to those like vulnerabilities of people being like, well, you shouldn't have been doing this the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Anytime I had a bad game or a game that we lost or something like that, it was always like, if this guy would just be more focused on football instead of podcasting. And the thing I obviously logically you look at it and you're like, okay, everybody does things outside of football. No one's just 100% ball all the time, whether it's playing video games or real estate or whatever. My thing just happens to be in front of everybody else's eyes. Yeah. And that's how logically, but when those things happen, you do have the insecurities of being like, maybe they're right. Maybe I should be just focused on X, Y, and Z. And that's the thing, the first couple of years of our podcast, I struggled with a lot. It was always about like backloading episodes and making sure that, I wasn't at the bus during the season
I
and
did
all
a
this
couple
different stuff.
episodes because just me and you, because you were gone, right?
Yeah.
And you guys were kind of
And the
doing that kind of stuff.
availability is there. Like
Yeah.
I had half of Monday off, all of Tuesday off, like a lot of opportunity to go and do what this was, but it was truly the insecurity of I got to make sure people know that I'm focused as opposed to just trusting my process and knowing for myself, the self-validation of being like, I know I'm doing what's right. It
Yeah.
was like trying to check those boxes. And it's so hard because we had Derek on, it would be last week. We actually, when we filmed him with yesterday, it was such a unique perspective to see from Derek because now you can see that a chapter of his career is ending, not the whole entire career, but the chapter of the Titans is ending, and the level of gratitude that he was displaying was unordinary. And it's you just kind of wish these levels of clarity you have after the fact, that post
Mhm.
nut clarity
Yep.
of your career or whatever, you could go back and be like, hey, listen, tell yourself it's all good. This is all just smoke and mirrors,
Mhm.
as opposed to, doing it the way you did originally.
No, yeah, I mean that's what. Yeah, I mean I've talked about that too. This vision that I've had of me that last fight, after the last fight in some arena somewhere, looking in the mirror when I know it's over, like putting myself in that position, in that psyche, in that feeling, in order to be grateful today.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, that is there. You do have so much. It happened to me big time with Mizzou wrestling. Like the last time I took off those straps, the last time, and that chapter was over, and I move on to the new one. I thought, man, why did I put so much pressure on myself? This wasn't that big of a deal. I underperformed really bad, which was a good thing for my mixed martial arts career because obviously now that has propelled me into the man I am today. But
Mm-hmm.
that clarity that you have after the fact, that's a really cool perspective to hear him